The world is changing in a huge way right now. It's all thanks to amazing technology progress and shifts happening around the globe. Ideas and information are spreading like wildfire, and we're more connected than ever. Looking back through history, big technology changes have always gone hand in hand with better ways to share information. The printing press made knowledge available to everyone, not just the elite. Computers let us chat across the world, and the internet hooked us up in ways that we never imagined. The open source movement has been instrumental in achieving technological progress. It facilitated collaborative development, reduced barriers to entry. Every time technology gets better, it brings cool opportunities and some tough problems too. We have seen how it can give us power or take it away. From the Industrial Revolution to our digital world today, new technology has often been grabbed by big shots to tighten their grip, like Rockefeller cornering the oil game with Standard Oil, or Google owning search, or Facebook shaping how we think and connect. This isn't about hating on technology. It's about seeing it can lift us up or boss us around. At the end of the day, it's not the technology itself, but how we implement it. Right now, we're already witnessing a wild time of change. Our lives are being transformed by technology that's bigger and more powerful than anything we have ever seen before.
AI is basically analogous to human mind. Just like how we designed planes that were analogous to birds, we are creating the most abstract meta, the biggest accomplishment human can ever make, which is the human mind itself, a mirror of the human mind itself. But what's more interesting is that it's built on a more efficient substrate, as it seems, which is silicon, where the electrons can move faster and we can program it much more specifically than the human brain itself. It basically rewires all of models of reality.
AI is the most impactful development, I believe, in human history. Bigger than the printing press, bigger than the turbine, bigger than the steam engine. It will unlock a level of productivity that humanity has never seen. It may also lead to some of the most devastating consequences for certain parts of the population that we have ever seen. The opportunity is large, but the risk is large as well. And this is why I'm so passionate about decentralization in this space.
Decentralization of AI is critical for many reasons. And the example that I like to start off when describing the importance of it for someone is just going back to social media. And if you ask anybody right now, how important is social media in your life? They'll say it's a core part. If you ask anybody, like, are you happy with the way that these social media platforms are run? Most people will say no, but they're forced to use them because, again, it's like society has formed itself around them. Whether it's censorship or these toxic algorithms are capturing people's attention, the lesson I feel like that can be learned from the last decade is that critical technology being controlled by a few corporations does not lead to good outcomes.
The geometry of AI is so different to the technologies of the past, where more compute and more data just improves it, which is unlike other technologies of the past, that we need new laws, right? And these companies are operating under the same principle of the past, which is that they can just create applications and sell to millions without seeing the repercussions that they have on the society. And so the nature of the AI is that it learns on the data generated by the individuals, unlike the few programmers that are coding the logic out. AI is truly just soaking the value out of humanity. And so if there is no track record of who created what value, then what you're basically doing is just stealing the value out of individuals and giving it in the power of the more powerful ones who don't really have any incentive to give the value back to the individuals.
And so when you think of AI, which is going to be the most important technology of the century, do we really want what happened in the social media space to happen here? The obvious answer is no. And the negative outcomes are probably going to be 10 times worse because AI is going to embed itself everywhere in our lives. And it already, in my opinion, is involved in almost every aspect of my life. And the easy question to ask is, do you want a corporation to influence your life, to be able to have control over you? That's essentially the question. And most people are going to say no. And so for that reason, decentralization is important because you need to have an alternative. Bitcoin emerged to be the alternative to fiat. And centralized intelligence production needs a counterweight as well. And I believe that's going to be Bittensor.
Bittensor is a non-sovereign, immutable, hard-cap supply, global, decentralized incentive mechanism that drives open source innovation. Now, that's a lot of adjectives, but each one of them is critically important because this is the alternative to the few large tech companies gatekeeping the most important technology in humanity.
If you think about what Bittensor is, it incentivizes everyone on the planet, anyone who wants to participate, to solve any problem.
And the solving is very open. The best mechanisms are a bit abstract. You don't need to do this thing exactly this way. You need to just give me this output that's good. This leaves room for people to optimize things, different parts of the stack that they're working on. It's all these optimizations are hidden from the network. We don't need to know these things. We just need the best output. By just optimizing and scoring the output, we're able to have people just solve every other efficiency, and we don't have to care about it or even know that it's possible to make it efficient in that method.
So if you can properly define a problem, if you can make a scoring mechanism for this problem and an evaluation to check if it's correct or not, you can solve anything you want on Bittensor. It doesn't even have to be compute or AI related. It can be any problem on Earth.
The beauty of Bittensor and one of the really powerful mechanisms is just that good is never good enough. Within like a centralized, just classic Web 2.0 company, if you're going to provide a model that, for example, like Subnet 44, just annotates football matches, you might say, okay, once we reach 80% accuracy, that's good enough. But within Bittensor, because your dev team is in essence constantly in competition with itself, 80% is never good enough because someone else will come back with 81% and 82 and 83. You're able to access higher quality engineers for cheaper who are going to work harder and longer hours than I think you would normally see.
The traditional structure of a company, with its bosses and its board of directors and its employees, has been around for a long time and has been incredibly successful. But what Bittensor is an alternative to this. And it's a way to coordinate people towards a common goal where those people don't necessarily know each other or have any reason to trust each other, but through competition dynamics, they can achieve something that you can only achieve through high levels of coordination.
I think the world better understands what decentralization is and now has an example in Bitcoin of how decentralized money and value could work. I think before Bitcoin, I don't think people really understood what decentralization kind of truly was. There really weren't any kind of good examples or models. So I think, Bittensor is kind of following in Bitcoin's footsteps. And I think over time, as more crypto projects reach product market fit and start delivering some real value to kind of consumers, I do think that people will understand and appreciate that decentralized solutions could be better, faster, cheaper than the kind of centralized solutions. But it's still very, very early.
If we learn from the past, Bitcoin was very effective at aggregating large amounts of compute and incentivizing that compute to do one specific thing, which in its case is mining SHA-256. So it's getting all of these computers and all of this compute capacity around the world to do one specific thing, and it's created a beautiful incentive mechanism to do that.
What did Bitcoin do really well? Well, Bitcoin incentivized Earth to donate all this CPU and all this electricity to run this new network. Now, nobody paid the miners. There was no money that exchanged hands. There was no CEO. There was no company. There was just the product of this new network, these things called Bitcoins that you got as a reward for helping to run the network. That created $2.5 trillion worth of value and one of Earth's greatest products of all time, Bitcoin.
Bitcoin became the largest specific compute network in the world because of two things: aligned incentives and open competition. Those two principles produce superior outcomes to what can be achieved through traditional centralized organizations, right? Like the number of Bitcoin miners, the number of Bitcoin contributors, holders, will outnumber any institution that can try to harness that many individuals. And that same thing applies to, again, like an AI network.
Humanity's most abstract form of energy is money. And it was that enabled us to build the largest supercomputer in the world, which was Bitcoin. It's a thermodynamic computer. It's just using an abstract representation of thermodynamics, which is money, and stitches together all of these resources. So I thought, hey, well, we can do that. We can do that for artificial intelligence. Let's try to do that.
When you get right down to it, Bittensor is an incentive alignment engine. Just abstract everything else away, that's what it is. When you look at what Bitcoin is, it's the same thing, right? So it worked really well once. What if we took that concept and abstracted it across lots of different digital domains, AI being the biggest one in Bittensor today, but any sort of digital commodity could also benefit from the lessons of Bitcoin. So when you think about Bittensor, that's what it really is. It's an abstracted version of the lessons of Bitcoin applied across all these different subnet domains.
It does this by incentivizing a network of miners to produce that digital commodity to the highest quality, the fastest, and with the lowest amount of compute and latency. And miners are in constant competition with each other, trying to create better and better outcomes for this specific digital commodity. The best miner gets paid the most, the worst miner gets booted from the network and a new one comes in. It's true digital Darwinistic competition at its finest.
A lot of people think it's not fair. Those on the bottom percentile of those producing the data say, oh, it's not fair, I keep getting kicked out, and my miners are getting deregistered. It's simple. It uses natural market forces to reward those that do the best at a job, to ensure that the quality of the commodity is at the top end of the spectrum and continually increasing. Assuming miners continue to compete to better each other and better each other and better each other, unless there is a ceiling of the value of this data that can be achieved, the quality and value of these commodities that are being produced will continue to increase at scale in terms of how they can be served and the value of them intrinsically.
The simplest way to explain mining is just problem solving. And when you have a group of miners competing with each other, really what they're competing about is who solves that specific problem in the most efficient way. Now, efficient can be the fastest, producing the best quality, and so on. So there can be different dimensions for what does problem solving, the quality of problem solving actually mean.
So let's take a step back. How does it work? Well, in Bittensor, subnets are like independent startups inside a shared economy. Each subnet sets its own goals. For example, the best decentralized storage provider for the most accurate medical image analyzer, and competes for attention and rewards. The rewards come in TAO tokens, which is the currency of the network. Just like startups, they attract talent and resources from around the world, with contributors joining in to improve the product and share in the success of it. Their performance is measured in real time, and the best performing subnets earn more TAO. Together, these AI startups form a decentralized marketplace of innovation where the most useful ones, the most useful ideas and projects rise to the top without a central company running the show.
If I had to explain in a nutshell where TAO comes from to someone who didn't have experience of Bitcoin and these dynamics of cryptocurrencies and their emission scales, the first question I would ask is, where does your fiat currency come from? Who prints or emits your euros and your dollars? Where are they coming from? When you understand that, I can then step back and say, well, okay, that's the flaws in the currency system. A cryptocurrency is usually birthed with a fixed supply, a maximum supply of what there can be. And there can be 21 million TAO. And in order to facilitate the growth and evolution of a network, the design was that there would be an emission of these tokens periodically that would then diminish over time.
Bittensor has the exact same emission schedule as Bitcoin itself. There's only 21 million coins total ever. It's very precise. We know exactly how much is going to be emitted when, right? So, and like Bitcoin, these new coins that are born are given to whoever is providing the most value to the Bittensor network at that time, right? Which subnet, and not only which subnet, but which miners on that subnet are producing the most value. There's 256 miners per subnet total. And within the miners, there's a competition, right? So you have a competition within a competition, and this is creating this fiery crucible of evolution, which is causing these great products to appear with greater and greater frequency. So you can argue whether this subsidization works or not. It clearly worked very well for Bitcoin, and so far it's clearly working very well for Bittensor. So I think we're onto something.
It is important that everybody is able to own a part of artificial intelligence, is because this technology is the technology that is evolving the fastest ever in human history, and it's going to be around for all future to come, essentially, right? And so enabling access to this technology for all of us, whenever you have a technology that everybody has equal access to it, the internet, then really exciting things happen, but they happen in a way that is much more well calibrated versus giving this technology to only a select number of players. And by giving this ability for everybody to own part of it means that everybody also has a say in it.
Dynamic TAO is the network's most significant upgrade to date because one, it further decentralized the network and allowed it to scale. So Dynamic TAO was the solution to the centralization issues and the bottleneck issues that Bittensor had. And the way that it approached this was, instead of requiring stakeholders to vote on how emissions are distributed, they pushed it to the market. The market now got to decide how emissions were distributed. And the way that was done was by giving each subnet its own token. And the relative prices of these tokens determined the amount of emissions that they received.
So if I believe in a certain subnet and in the intelligence that it's actually producing, then I will come in and actually own some of the tokens that are being emitted as part of this subnet ecosystem. If at some point I see that the type of intelligence being produced is either not worthwhile or is not in accordance to what I believe in, well, then I can actually unstake my tokens and go and stake it to a different subnet that I'm more aligned with. And so by doing so, it's not a vote that I make every 4 years, it's a vote that I can make every day. I can decide what direction and what subnets I want to support as part of this decentralized AI.
The pro is that you immediately get traction because the community gets excited if you're building something interesting, and your products get users much faster than they would otherwise. So you have this strong distribution flywheel that you get tapped into. Pre-dTAO, the feedback loop was quite slow, and the validators would take a long time to listen to you. They didn't even have any incentive to get on a call with you and hear your idea. But now, post-dTAO, the things have changed, where the whole market is deciding whether your product is important or not, and the reaction time between you doing something as a subnet, launching something, and the community responding to it is much shorter.
In a way, dynamic TAO actually made Bittensor permissionless. It actually allowed anybody to show up with an idea, and if it was good and the broader market likes it, then they'd be able to build it. And when you don't have a board of directors or a select group needed to build your idea, that just accelerates the progress and allows ideas that traditionally wouldn't be allowed to exist. And maybe those ideas aren't great, but maybe out of the 10 really bad ideas, one of them actually turns out to be valuable. Then you've allowed something to emerge that wouldn't have been possible in the prior system.
I think there's 3 main compelling reasons a company would want to build on Bittensor. One is resources, right? So you're outsourcing the work across miners and validators, and you're not paying them. The network is paying them, right? So you're outsourcing the work to others, and you get access to a global community of developers that are building. Number 2, if you truly believe in the decentralized nature of what Bittensor is building and not gatekeeping information, data privacy, etc., building in an open source, transparent way will matter to you. And then ultimately, where I think we're starting to see now with over 100 subnets is the network effects, right? You're going to have other subnets that may have complementary businesses to what you're building. It will be open source. You can access that quickly and easily and not have to go through the gatekeepers of the large hyperscaling businesses. So at the end of the day, resource access, the ethos of decentralization, and network effects.
So you have an app, you've built it, it works great, it's getting mass adoption. You need 10 times the compute that you had before. To go to Amazon or Google, you're gonna have to go talk to an account rep, you're gonna have to get it approved, it'll take a lot of time, it's really, really expensive. Generally, you have to sign multi-year commitments to get a reasonable price, all of that stuff. It's really difficult to do. On Bittensor, on Shoots, you just go deploy your app, you start using it, the miners will scale it up. You don't have to ask anyone for permission, you just deploy it, and it's purely market driven, so the more you use it, the more we scale up. That's it.
We're still incredibly early. The people that are currently inside Bittensor are the people who have a natural curiosity and let that curiosity lead them deeply into something that's fascinating to them. And they've got through that barrier of trying to understand it. What is this? How does this work? To come through that and out the other side and see this thriving ecosystem and this powerful technology, yeah, you wouldn't leave. I can't think of a more interesting technology area to work in.
I don't even really focus on the philosophical or moral or the ethical reasons of why we need decentralized AI, because I think most people understand that, right? Most people know that, yeah, open AI is not open, they have way too much power. It doesn't need much convincing. But people don't understand the second part, which is, no, there are structural advantages to being decentralized. It's the same reason why like open source is superior to closed source in the way that the pace of innovation is just so much faster because you have people all over the world iterating on the same code. And the amount of resources and like brain power that can be accumulated or acquired using a protocol is way more than any centralized organization can ever reach, right? Like incentives drive the world. And like just to wrap that up, it's like aligned incentives and competition, open competition. You'll outperform any centralized organization.
Why would I go online? Like there's nothing online. Like there was no Amazon yet, right? It was like you're a loser if you're online. Like live your life in the real world. Don't live your life online, like on the web, right? It's not a thing. It's like that's what people who have no lives do, right? So.
Well, as I mentioned, I have no desire to be a part of the internet because I feel like I'm so inundated with information all the time that I don't want more. Don't you ever feel like it's just constant bombardment?
I don't know. I guess the thing I'd resent most is I would resent that, at least when you're home, if the phone rings, you have the option of not answering it. On the internet, people can send you messages all the time people you don't even want to hear from.
It took a while, and it took a while even for newspapers to realize that they should have a website, right? Or banks to realize that they should have a website. It was sort of like, why would I want that? Like, it makes no sense. At a certain point, it just sort of bounces around until enough sort of forward-looking people adopt it that it creates enough of a mini network that it catches fire. And all of a sudden these people are buying stuff from one another on eBay, right? And it's like, oh, where'd you get that? Oh, I bought it on eBay. Oh, how'd you pay for it? Well, I use this thing called PayPal, right? And you have enough of these little moments that are sparks for the rest of the world to catch fire, but you need those early adopters to kind of start networking with one another and start finding the new thing to be useful amongst themselves, right? And at a certain point, that creates fusion, which lights everything else up on fire. And that happened with the internet. It definitely happened with Bitcoin. And these were like 10-year journeys with both of those, right? It is happening with Bittensor, and I think it's happening a lot faster because, again, the roads have already been built by Bitcoin and the internet itself. And we're just traveling those roads now with this new thing.
As Bittensor becomes more well-known, I think what will also hopefully become more well-known is anybody can launch a subnet. Anybody can register a subnet. Anybody can tap into the power of Bittensor. And the cost to do that is it's going to get driven down over time. So in the same way where in the early internet days, it would cost $1 million to launch a website, you could probably now launch a website for $5. And I think we'll see something very similar happen with Bittensor that allows the high school student on the weekend who has a great idea for a new application that's utilizing decentralized intelligence to launch that subnet on Bittensor.
Something like the internet is created. It's clearly an incredible technology, but it's not until it gets opened up and it becomes easier to build on top of it, and you democratize the building on top of the internet, that we start to actually see what the internet, what its actual use cases are and what it's capable of. I think it's the same with Bittensor. There's an underlying technology here that's powerful, but what is Bittensor for? We don't know that until we see more and more building on top of it. I think in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time, we're going to be able to say, oh, that's what Bittensor is really for. And I think that's what building a subnet is about. We're experimenting with a use case. But yeah, I would love to see Bittensor have thousands of subnets. That is the route I would like it to take. I think some people are worried about the quality, and they think it's a risk to open it up freely. But I don't think that's, you look at something like the internet, I think its strength is that there's so many different attempts to build different things on the internet and the most powerful things that have ever been built through that sort of competitive process are incredible, and they've changed the world. And I think the same may be true for Bittensor.
So I'm now old enough that I've seen the same fractal repeat several times now. First time I saw it was when the PC freed us from the tyranny of the mainframe, right? So you used to have to ask some guy in a server room to give you an account on a mainframe in a company. But when the PC came along, you could just go buy your own computer and bring it home. And now you had the same thing in your bedroom. And everybody did before long, right? So that was the first time we saw lots of little defeat very large and centralized. And then we saw the internet, right? So the internet came along and it defeated the online services like CompuServe, AOL, Prodigy, Delphi Internet. You know, those names are largely in the dustbin of history. The open internet, where anyone could add a website or do anything, that became the higher quality, much larger phenomenon. And in both cases, why did these things win? Because you can't fight the whole world. If you make something permissionless, that's where the path of least resistance is. So that's where most people are going to go. That's where the free market's going to exist. That's where the competition is going to exist for the best ideas and the best products. And these other things are going to wither and die. They're too closed, they're too controlled, right? You want that open freedom.
Bittensor will absolutely face backlash in the same way that Bitcoin faced skepticism and backlash since its creation. And there's a few reasons for that. I think, you know, with Bitcoin, you had a large number of incumbents whose businesses and business models were at risk. So that, of course, they were going to push back. You had governments that did not like the idea of being able to kind of monitor and survey, you know, kind of transactions. They didn't like money being outside of the system. But with these decentralized global systems, they're unstoppable. And I think with Bittensor, it's not unstoppable today, but I think it will get to the point where it does become unstoppable. And along the way, it's going to make a lot of enemies. It's going to put certain businesses at risk, and there will be a bunch of negative news cycles. Who knows what those cycles will be about? But I have a high degree of confidence that if Bittensor continues on the current path that it's on, it will get through those periods of negative press or whatever the challenges are, no problem.
There's sort of this distrust in general, I think, in the AI community for crypto. It's just like there's a wall and you should not cross over into the other land. And people think just instinctively that if it's AI and it's in crypto, it must be a scam. The crypto part isn't the money, it's the permissionlessness, it's the having the entire world compete to solve your problem. It's opening up access so that you get the brightest minds in the world solving whatever problem you want to define. It's not to drive the price of that token up. And so I think if we can properly explain to people the reason why we want decentralized compute and how crypto is kind of the only way to do that, breaking down that wall is the most important mission that we could possibly solve, I think. And so, for example, a couple weeks ago, there was that huge internet outage. Google was down, Amazon was down, Cloudflare, ChatGPT, you name it, you know. And then if you look at Shoots, we didn't even notice. We had no impact whatsoever. Anyone that was using us for their AI-related stuff never experienced any outage or slowdown or anything. And I think it's important to show that, yes, Shoots happens to be related to crypto, but that's a good thing.
The crypto aspect of Bittensor should never be undermined. People have said, no, be an AI company that uses a bit of crypto, or be a crypto company that uses AI, depending on where you are. No, it's the synthesis. But many people in the AI world want us to forget the crypto side because they don't understand it. They think it's grungy, they think it's a scam. But no, it is just as profound as the creation of new life, the innovation in the way that we can organize ourselves with digital currencies and open ownership systems.
What's interesting here is that as AI started exploding and people needed to use each other's resources more and contribute algorithms and servers and computers to solve a problem or to train a model, there was an obvious need to keep track of it. So the insightful folks that created Bittensor solved that problem by using a digital ledger, right? A digital ledger blockchain, and think of it as like a large Excel spreadsheet sort of thing. A simple way to think about it is that we need to keep track of who's doing what, where the work is going, and how to reward it accordingly and real time in a way. So next thing you know, you have a crypto project, right? So something that didn't really start off as a crypto project quickly became a very fast mass adoption of a blockchain solution that we now enjoy, and it has to have a token related to it, and and it's for governance and for rewards. This was kind of a special way how it all came about, and I'm pretty excited about the future.
I think one of the ways that Bittensor is going to be able to become more well-known within kind of scientific communities, academic communities, is going to be the successes, the advances that we're seeing at the subnet level being written about, being published, being talked about publicly and in those circles. And so I'd like to think that as some of the more mature subnet teams make real breakthroughs, that they invest the time and energy to actually write it down and talk about it publicly.
What is also interesting about Bittensor, in terms of the talent it's able to pull in, is it completely decouples your CV with your quality of output, right? So to get a job at Meta, you have to have gone to the right school, you have to then gone to the right university, and then you have to have worked in the right internships throughout university. And that's a load of just high bars, and I think in that process you miss a whole bunch of great engineers, let alone the people that just don't live in the right country. And Bittensor just completely removes that. It's just purely, it's you, it's code, and it's a leaderboard. It doesn't matter where you're from, what your background is.
I think that is essential because it means that we're measuring things properly. If you can contribute, you're valuable. And we don't care if you're black, white, gay, short, tall, in Africa, in South America, in Russia. If you're on the Axis or the Allies, we don't care. Because we're all driven towards each other and aligned through a protocol that is trying to make something bigger than itself.
If you go to work for a company and a startup, you're not going to be paid what you're actually worth. Only the founders are going to be paid what they're worth, and that is a very imbalanced and lopsided trade, right? Only a few people in the company are founders. Not everyone is a founder.
I think a lot of employees of these frontier AI labs will start to migrate over to Bittensor. It will start in there part-time, and then eventually the light bulb will switch and they'll realize, wow, there is a lot larger upside here for me in this decentralized world than there is working as a cog in a machine in a large tech company.
I think it will almost become maybe the dirty secret of AI ML, that people compete and work on Bittensor, because you don't need to tell anyone. That's the beauty of having these pseudonyms and have the opportunity to be undoxed. There's a whole talent pool that I don't think we're aware of competing in this space, and we can attest that the competition is becoming incredibly fierce, and we're having to dig harder and harder into different types of machine learning engineers, profiles, specialisms, GPU optimization. We're at the coalface of AI talent, I'd say, within this space already.
Part of that comes from the native incentives on the ecosystem. Billions of dollars every single year are being distributed to those network participants. And part of it is also building a product that can be your legacy. You know, a subnet doesn't need to die with its founder. A subnet can build a digital commodity that could be used hundreds of years into the future. And there is a legacy play there for really talented developers as well.
An AI builder or a startup builder should ask themselves is whether they want to go to a conventional institute and get money from them and sell 20% of their company, or build it in an open ecosystem that values your digital commodity directly and doesn't take any piece of the company the way normal institutes do.
What it comes down to is that no single company has a monopoly on the smartest people. No single company has a monopoly on the means by which you can produce the highest level of intelligence.
Bittensor, or in fact, anything that is decentralized, has a long-term advantage. At the beginning, when centralized companies can accumulate a lot of talent or compute, they can be very quick to market with something. Like obviously OpenAI, X, and Meta and others can quickly assemble an army of people. But there's only so many people you can put in a building, or so many computers your credit card can take. When you open it up, you really have a kind of a crowdsource, wide-ranging global source of talent and compute. And at that time, if you create the right protocol and the right way to reach all of us, you're going to be bigger and win at the end.
To build a successful subnet, I think you have to bring it back to a lot of first principles when it comes to business building. A lot of people, when they enter the Bittensor world, get lost in the technical complexity. But at the end of the day, you need to start with a very focused and narrow scope to the problem you're looking to solve. And then once you have iterated and defined that problem well, you can then begin to expand the scope. So people that come in to do a big thing with many attributes, boil the ocean, tend to fail. The other thing that is critical in launching a subnet is understanding the different stakeholders you have. So whereas in a traditional business, when you have a startup, maybe you have some angel investors and employees, maybe those are your only two stakeholders. In the world of Bittensor, you have miners, you have validators, you're building your own community, you have token holders at large. You may also have investors that are entering your particular subnet and you're managing those. Each one of those has a different message. Each one of those needs constant updates and communications. And so it's really understated the requirements around marketing, communications, public relations, etc., to be a successful subnet in the early days in explaining what it is you're doing and how your business is building and improving. And then the last thing I would add here is you need to be ready to pivot. Incentive mechanisms break. Teams will learn through failure in a very public manner, and they need to be able to pivot their model, recode it, refactor quickly to continue the momentum that they have.
You're going to get beat up and kicked around and pushed about, but that's part of the space. And if you can overcome that and keep on going and stay in the trenches, the learning and opportunity that presents itself is huge.
The fundamental concept of Bittensor is incentive alignment, right? I mean, from a network as a whole with dTAO to the actual incentive mechanism of your subnet. And there have been some misguided incentive mechanisms in the past. And that is the most difficult part of building anything, is making sure that your incentive mechanism, your validation, verification incentives, that needs to be correct for anything to work. And so tweaking that, you always have to make sure your incentive mechanism is getting what you want out of the miners, not what you think you want. And so incentive mechanism design is the hardest thing you could possibly do. But if you get that right, the platform will work really well.
For individuals and companies that want to get involved in Bittensor, really the most important thing is to engage with the community. Bittensor is really unlike any crypto project I've ever been a part of, where it is incredibly collaborative. And while there may be some levels of competition, everybody involved wants to advance Bittensor and wants to help each other. So whether you want to start a subnet or you want to utilize the intelligence that's being generated by Bittensor, or you want to provide some product or service to support the ecosystem, the best thing you can do is make it known and say, hey, this is what we're doing, and ask for help. The community will support.
When we reached out to the different key stakeholders within the ecosystem, for instance, Mog, for instance, Samdare Formalized, Const, so many individuals that gave us the opportunity to jump on a call with us, give us half an hour of their time with two guys who were really figuring out what's going on in this ecosystem. And they listened to us and they gave us an opinion that we wouldn't have got anywhere else, and they helped form our ideas of how to approach what we've built at Tensora today. And I would say to any engineer, any individual that's looking at Bittensor, like, reach out. People will jump on a call with you and give them their time, and we certainly will, because people gave us that time as well when we first got into the space.
I think it's really cool that Bittensor is organizing all these people. It's becoming more and more 24/7, right? We have people in Asia now that are contributing. Before it was all North America, right? All the nodes were kind of hosted there. We could see their IP addresses. People started expanding to Europe, right? We started seeing like nodes pop up in Germany and all those places. It's becoming more and more distributed. And it's all these groups of people that are coming together that I kind of had no idea about. It's interesting to see all these people that I haven't met yet, that I might never meet, but are all interested in this same thing. They're all coming together in the same thing, and they're all organizing to contribute to the same thing. And I think that's really, really cool and really interesting.
When technology is fairly launched, and again, everyone has an equal opportunity, people can be brought in a lot easier. You know, they align with the ethos. And it's truly decentralized in the way where it's like not a group of insiders being like a couple of VCs in the founding team that are making all the decisions and having like asymmetric access to information. And so I truly think that's why Bittensor is the most successful decentralized AI protocol, because it did things right in the beginning. It gave fair access to everyone, no matter what your economic class was, no matter if you were an accredited investor or not. If you understood AI, if you wanted to make a bet on two really strong founders, you know, Jacob and Allah, then like you had the opportunity to. And you can see that like a lot of the members who were around in the early days are still here. So many people who are just like committed to this, and you don't find that within other ecosystems, because it's a lot more artificial in the way that like they've been stood up and the way they emerge.
Anytime there is an industrial revolution or kind of a tectonic shift in the way things are done, we need to learn from the past in order to get an understanding of what might happen in the future. And I think going back to the Industrial Revolution, we can look at a few major things. One, you can see the core inputs of that revolution. And in my opinion, the core inputs of the Industrial Revolution were oil, steel, and railways. And it was the mass production of these commodities that enabled the commoditization of machinery, which eventually led to the commoditization of goods. And this new way of doing things with machinery led to titans of industry, led to major winners, economic winners in the United States and abroad. And if you look at the information revolution, those core inputs were internet, software, and microprocessors. That led to the commoditization of information. Yes, there were titans of industry and major winners, Apple, Microsoft, Google, that came from this information revolution. But I could make the argument that if we look back, the real winner of the information revolution was Bitcoin. Fastest growing asset of all time, fastest growing technology of all time in terms of user adoption, actually grew at double the pace that the internet grew at its peak. Moving forward into the intelligence revolution, the three core commodities I could make the argument would be compute, inference, and data. These are really the sensory inputs of AI. And this will lead to the commoditization of intelligence. And yes, there will be titans of industry, OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, but I would like to make the argument that I believe Bittensor will be the outright winner of the intelligence revolution. And why is that? Well, Bittensor aggregates the core commodities, inference, data, and compute. It also incentivizes not only ownership of the network, but incentivizes the creation of the commodities in the network. So being a subnet owner You're incentivized to create these commodities. And then through the TAO, you're incentivized to own the network. So there are a lot of parallels here with Bitcoin and Bittensor, but I believe the only way that we can get to kind of benevolent AI that is useful for 8 billion plus people would be to build it in a decentralized, permissionless, fair, and open fashion. And Bittensor is really the only game in town right now.
Most people don't realize that the future is being decided right now. And the big question is this: will the future be owned and controlled by a handful of massive corporations? Or will we build something better, something open, something fair, something built by all of us? We have seen this movie before, right? The printing press promised freedom of information, but ended up centralizing who got to publish. The internet connected the world, but also created new gatekeepers. You see, every wave of tech starts out as a revolution, but too often gets hijacked by power. This time, we cannot let that happen. AI has the potential to radically improve the world, accelerate research, solve global challenges, and, lift up billions. But only if we build it the right way. That means decentralized. That means transparent. That means owned by the people who build and use it, not hoarded behind closed doors. Let's stop thinking about the future of AI as something that is happening to us, because the future of AI is not locked in. It's being coded, coordinated, and incentivized right now. And we get to decide what kind of system we want to live in. If we don't build this decentralized future ourselves, no one will do it for us. So let's make it happen.